Hi, my name is Rachel Bradley, and I will be discussing how art has changed over time. The art of the ancient world reveals a tremendous amount about the culture, values, and beliefs of the early civilizations. Through the ages, art has remained significant. At a time when few people could read or write, art was an important means of communication and a critical way to record important events. For this video, I will be discussing the purposes of art and how it has changed from the origins of civilization to the Renaissance. Let's begin with the origins of civilization. One example of ancient art is Stonehenge, which is a massive stone monument. Most of the construction took place during the Neolithic Revolution. During this time, people began to homestead and live in community-type settings. Stonehenge was used as a cremation burial ground and as a calendar of sorts. The next period is Classicism. One example of art from this period is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II to beautify the capital of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. It was also one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. One legend states that the king built the gardens for his wife, Queen Amethyst, because she missed the green hills and valleys of her homeland. However, the Hanging Gardens have not been proved to have existed by archaeologists. Another example of art during this period is the funerary masks, which are frequently found in ancient graves going back to prehistory. Bound to the head of the mummified corpse, the mask was a kind of portrait that preserved the identity of the dead person in the afterlife. After Classicism is the era of power and glory in Rome. The Arch of Titus is a triumphal arch that was the most popular and widely used symbol of Roman imperial victory. It commemorates the final days of the Jewish wars fought by emperors Vespasian and Titus. The Arch of Titus is more rightly classed with sculpture because actual arches serve to enclose interior space. The arch functioned as visual propaganda and as a monumental gateway through which triumphal armies marched, often carrying the spoils of war. The next era is the era of Revelation, which includes early Christian art. Christianity was not legalized until 313 AD. Prior to that, Christians were persecuted or killed if they professed their faith. Symbols were used so the believers could identify themselves as converts without non-believers knowing the actual meanings. The fish, or ichthys, was used as a representation of Christ because the letters in the Greek word for fish were an acrostic combination of the first letters of the Greek words Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. Also, Christ's death and resurrection were depicted by Old Testament scenes like Jonah and the whale. The scene of Jonah and the whale was significant because Jonah stayed in the whale's belly for 3 days and was then regurgitated onto dry land. Likewise, Christ was buried, then arose from the grave to live again in 3 days. Then comes the period of Christendom. Gothic cathedrals are a type of art that represents this period. They are religious buildings that act as a house of worship and a constant reminder of the power and presence of God. Gothic cathedrals serve many purposes beyond their chief function as seats of the local bishops and archbishops. Gothic cathedrals function as the hub of town commerce and characterize civic pride. New building techniques such as flying buttresses enabled architects to spread the weight of taller walls and loftier towers. This all meant that Gothic cathedrals could, quite literally, scale new heights. It allowed them to soar upward to the heavens, perfect for cathedrals and churches. The last period we will discuss is the Renaissance, which is inspired by an optimistic view of the human potential for knowledge and pleasure. Renaissance artists sought to achieve a greater sense of realism and naturalism, which was shown in The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Renaissance art focused on the beauty of the human beings and the natural world. Paintings revealed a more lifelike and three-dimensional perspective and used light and shadow, shown in The Calling of St. Matthew by Caravaggio. Some well-known Renaissance artists are Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Caravaggio, and Raphael. In conclusion, art has remained significant from the origins of civilization through the Renaissance period. It began as a form of communication before language was created and evolved to eventually convey the emotions and perspectives we see in Renaissance paintings. Art expresses the creative and imaginational skill of the artist, primarily for their beauty or emotional power.